When I met Jack in 1982, he was a young, hardcore Marine Corps officer and a senior instructor in the Bujinkan Budo Taijutsu martial art I was studying. He punched me, he kicked me, and he tossed me around like a rag doll frequently as he taught me how to do the same to others. Today, Jack Hoban is president of Resolution Group International and a subject matter expert for the U.S. Marine Corps Martial Arts Program, which he co-created and continues to teach at the Marine Corps base in Quantico, Virginia, and elsewhere. Jack has led over 600 workshops and seminars around the world. He has addressed the FBI, NYPD, Chicago PD, Camden County Police Department, universities, and other government and private organizations on ethics and martial arts over the last 2 decades. Camden, New Jersey was the most dangerous town in America per capita. The previous city police department had been disbanded due to an inability to control the high crime rate, poor relations with the community, and cost overruns. Jack and his team were tasked with helping shape the culture and skills of the new Camden County Police Department virtually from scratch. His business and military experiences, as well as an extensive 30-plus year background in martial arts, gave him a unique and interesting perspective. He is the author of the books, The Ethical Warrior and The Ethical Protector, Police Ethics, Tactics, and Techniques. Help me give Jack Hoban a warm GGBC welcome this morning.
Okay, looks good, let's go. So, Marty, I have to tell you, where I work in the Marine Corps Martial Arts Center of Excellence is on the same side of the street, same side of 95 as you are. We're at the basic school. Here's our building. And what I do there, as Tony said, is I'm the subject matter expert for the Marine Corps Martial Arts and Warrior Ethics. You want to see a video of our training? Raise your hand.
The job of the Marine Corps Martial Arts Program is to train martial arts instructor trainers.
Your first engagement is to be 101, knife first bayonet.
And our Marines at the Martial Arts Center of Excellence, they truly embody our values of honor, courage, and commitment. And then they stand before other Marines and very passionately inspire them to emulate those traits.
We look out for each other. We take care of each other.
It helps Marines reach that next level. They get the basics when they join the Marine Corps, and then they're selected to come here to the Martial Arts Center of Excellence.
Execute that leg sweep, dropping him down to the deck.
Leaving here, there's such a force for the commanders back at their units that they can go out there and make better Marines.
It's not just about martial arts techniques. The Marine Corps Martial Arts Program is a whole Marine program, which emphasizes the complete development, the mental, the physical, and the character aspects of our warriors.
Having that mental and character aspect is very crucial to the development of a true ethical warrior.
I try to think of myself as an ethical warrior, and that you're not just going out and fighting mindlessly. People are safer because I'm there, and that's what we try to teach, is to have strong character, not just be strong physically.
Because of the human aspect of this, we tell stories about warriors that have gone before us.
Right now I want to talk to you about a Marine, Captain Brian Stan. For his actions during Operation Matador, he received the Silver Star.
I became a Marine because I wanted to be something bigger than myself. I wanted to serve my country.
I grew up idolizing my grandfather. He's, to me, what I think a warrior should be, what a man should be, and I decided to join the Marine Corps to kind of follow in his footsteps, and it's been the best decision I've ever made.
You have to actually be a Marine to live it in order to know and understand what it is.
You're a Marine before you're anything else. You're a warrior before you're anything else.
It becomes part and parcel of who you are as a man. It becomes part of your heart and your soul. We protect and defend our fellow citizens, our way of life, and we protect and defend all life, not only Americans, but those around the world in need.
So that is our program. And this is how we train. We have a methodology that's kind of interesting. You talk a little bit, and then you train a little bit, and then you talk a little bit, and then you train a little bit. Anybody recognize this Marine? You may have heard it a little bit a couple of years ago that there was a Marine that challenged Justin Timberlake, the singer, to go to the Marine Corps ball, and that's her, Kelsey DeSantis. And he went, and he was really impressed with the Marine Corps. He had no idea. And just for the record, she can take him. And, you know, this is important, this concept of talking a little bit and training a little bit, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to match a moral lesson with physical activity. And when you combine the training in that way, you kind of get that, you get that synergy between moral behavior and moral thought. So you may be saying, well, that's very interesting, Jack, but you know, what does that have to do with policing? Well, speaking of the FBI again, right after 9/11, we were training in Quantico, and the Marines were doing what we call counterinsurgency, win hearts and minds training overseas in Iraq. And the FBI got interested in what we were doing, and they asked us to brief them on our cross-cultural conflict resolution methodologies and our win the hearts and minds methodologies. And I got selected to go and brief the FBI up the FBI building, the Hoover building. And when I finished the presentation, a bunch of people came up to me and said, you know, I got to tell you, this sounds exactly like community policing. Why don't you take this program and tailor it for police departments? Well, I wasn't a police officer, but I had a lot of friends who I trained in martial arts with who are police officers from the FBI and the NYPD and US Marshals. And we put together a program, and one of the engagements that we got when people heard about what we were doing was we were engaged to train the new Camden County Police Department. As Tony said, that police department had been disbanded and reformed because of the high crime rate. In fact, it's not a big city, but per capita, it was the most dangerous city in America for several years. So we went in and we took our Win the Hearts and Minds program that had several aspects to it, which I'll talk about. And we trained this entire department from scratch. And immediately crime went down. And now Camden is seen as maybe the gold standard of community policing. And a lot of people have been talking about it based upon recent events. And, you know, I don't really believe everything I read in the newspaper or see in the media these days, and maybe you don't either. So I really wasn't sure what the impact we were making, but until Halloween. And on Halloween, we found out that something that had never occurred in Camden before, all of the kids wanted to be police officers, and they were emulating the new police culture. They wanted to be just like the policemen that they were seeing on the streets doing the community policing. So that's when I knew we really were making a difference. And the difference boils down to, what is the self-concept that you have as a police officer? Is it a protector or an enforcer? Of course, we have to enforce the law. But what's your basic self-concept? What's your foundational self-concept? We found out that it was really important to clarify this because, you know, for example, do you think this guy, this officer, woke up that morning and said to himself, you know what I'm going to do today, honey? I'm going to handcuff some woman and kick her in the head. Of course, he didn't wake up thinking that that was going to happen. But under stress, and I'm sure she was mouthing off to him, what came out? Did the protector come out or did the enforcer come out? And that's why we really have to clarify our self-concept, because under stress, what we really are deep inside, that's what's going to come out. So we talked about using this protector culture that we had done in the Marine Corps, and we promoted and clarified it for all the officers. And we demanded that all the officers show respect for themselves and others all the time. When I say others, I mean all others. And then another piece of the puzzle was effective de-escalation and verbal techniques. We used verbal defense and influence, VDI. You can Google it or you can email me and I can tell you a little bit more about it. It's kind of a grandchild of the old verbal judo, but kind of upgraded and, for the times. It's much more for the times these days. And then finally, Marines are not often known for their ability to de-escalate, but we are known for our tactics. So we felt comfortable working with these officers to make them more physically fit and tactically proficient. You may be wondering how I got into all of this. Hey, Tony, I can't see myself. What button do I push? This one? Oh, there I am.
There we go. Yeah,
So I want to tell you a little bit about how I got into this, because I had a warped self-concept too. When I got out of the, back from overseas, and I was stationed in San Diego at the Marine Corps base down there, you may know that that's where we train recruits, and all the guys with the Smokey the Bear hats yelling at everybody. I was in charge of them. And I had this self-concept that I had developed, and I don't want to sound melodramatic, but my self-concept was, I'm a bad ass. I'm a killer. In fact, Marines these days, they're so crazy. They sometimes don't even say hello to each other. They say kill. And it was just driven into us, kill, kill, kill. And I didn't join the Marine Corps to kill anybody, but after being subjected to that culture, I kind of had this idea that I had to walk around town. In fact, I used to go to this place called the Red Garter in Ocean Beach, and I had this self-concept that I had to, look really tough. So I would walk through the door, when I'd go there for a beer, and I'd look around and I'd mentally kill everybody in the place. I'd elbow this guy or a beer bottle over this guy's head or kick this guy's knee out. And after I had cleared the joint, I could relax and have a beer. And, I just walked around town with this look on my face like, you better not mess with me, And I had a mentor at this time in graduate school. His name was Robert Humphrey. And his career after being a Marine on Iwo Jima and being shot and wounded, he worked in the Win the Hearts and Minds Cold War atmosphere for the State Department for like 30 years. And, he was a real warrior, not like me. And, he observed me, how I interacted with society. And he said to me one day, he said, Jack, do you realize that when people meet you, they feel a little challenged and uncomfortable, and a little intimidated? Did you know that? And you know what I thought, right? I thought, good. They ought to. I'm a Marine. I'm a martial artist, I'm a killer. And he shook his head. He realized I was not getting the point, but he was very wise. He didn't tell me I was a knucklehead right up front. What he did was he gave me some homework. And here's the homework he gave me. He said, Jack, tonight when you go out, instead of trying to challenge everybody that you meet with your eyes, I want you to say these words in your head. Wherever I go, everyone's a little safer because I'm there. Well, I respected him very much by this time. So it's Friday night and I was headed out, of course, to the Red Garter. It was happy hour and I walked into the Red Garter and it was like the Star Wars bar. I mean, people were fighting and rolling around on the ground and doing shots. One night there was actually a sailor hanging himself in the head in the men's room over the barmaid. I mean, if you wanted to get in trouble, this was the perfect place, okay? And I walk in, and I told you how I used to make my entrance, but this day I had my homework, and I said, you know, everybody in this place is a little safer because I'm here. Anybody in need has a friend because of me and my skills. And you know what happened? Nothing. Everybody continued to fight. Everybody continued to do shots. Nothing happened on the outside. But on the inside, I can only explain it as an epiphany. I mean, the hair actually was standing up in the back of my head. Because as I said those words, it was like, oh my gosh. You mean I don't have to have that self-concept anymore? I mean, I'm the same size, I'm the same skills, same guy. But I realized that I didn't need that self-concept, and that the self-concept of a protector felt way better, and just as safe. So that's an important thing. And we'll talk about this in a second, but this self-protector, this self-concept of being a protector makes everybody safer. Not just the other people, not even just the bad guys, but you. It also makes community policing a lot more effective because the people will feel that about you. They will feel safe about you and they'll support you. We also know from the PTSD literature, and you know, we talked about that a little bit before, that it's psychologically healthier to think of yourself as a protector rather than an enforcer. And as we'll talk about also, it's quite tactically sound. Now, when we talk about respect, this is the key ethic underneath, kind of the foundation of the ethical protector self-concept. Respect for the life and human equality of others. And we're not necessarily talking about their behavior. People get mixed up about this. They say, I'm not going to respect a criminal. I'm not going to respect a terrorist. We're not respecting their behavior. We're not respecting their attitude. We're not respecting their words necessarily. But the discipline of an ethical protector is the ability to separate in your mind the relative value of a person's behavior from the absolute value of their life. And this concept of human equality, you know, again, we've said it since we were in grammar school. It's in our founding documents, but when you talk to people, sometimes they have a little problem with, you know, people are different. You know, some are tall, some are short, some are nice, some are not nice. But let me ask you these questions. Ask yourself these questions. Are there richer people in the world than you are? And can you live with that? Are there smarter people in the world? One or two. Can you live with that? Better looking, more highly educated. Are there nicer people in the world? People who have done more good works in their life than you have. You probably admit that those people exist. But does any of those things make their life worth more than your life? I think most would agree that, you know, all those other things are relative and they're different for me than they are for you. I mean, coming up on Sunday, aren't the Jets playing the 49ers? I mean, we may have a difference in relative values this Sunday, but doesn't make our lives unequal. And don't overthink it. We all have the life value or we wouldn't be alive. It's our most superseding value. We can't have our other relative values. We can't have behaviors if we don't have our life. And it applies to criminals. I mean, what's the worst crime? Stealing your car, selling dope, robbing a bank, or being treated like a subhuman piece of crap? So these are the arguments, these are persuasive stories that we told to these officers, and which I told to Marines before that gave them the ability to appreciate and honor the life value of others, even their enemies, even criminals, even though they had to deal professionally and maybe even quite violently with their behaviors. You know, I'm not a philosopher, but I think it's important just to understand that this whole concept of values, morals, and ethics as it pertains to not just policing, not just being in the military, but to our lives. So us Marines, we like to do things Boney style. We're not that smart, okay? So I want to tell you everything I know about values, morals, and ethics in one story. And this is the exact story that we use with the Marines and with the police officers. So if you look at this picture, and I want you to ask yourself, who is the guy on the left? And I ask this question all over the world, hundreds of times. And every time I ask this question, I get the same answer. That guy's a bully. That guy's a bully. And it's true. And bullies, like all of us, have some relative values. He likes blue trousers. He likes orange shirts. Probably a 49ers fan. He's a ginger. But he has another relative value that kind of identifies him as a bully, and that is he thinks that he can disrespect others. He thinks so. And it's a relative value because you and I don't think he should be able to do that. So if you understand that those relative values, if they supersede the life value of that other kid, you may never have thought of it that way, but when that kid bullies that other kid or hurts that other kid or disrespects that other kid, you have a relative value superseding a life value. How many people think in their guts that that's wrong? Congratulations, you're moral. You saw a relative value superseding a life value. You felt that it was wrong. You're a moral person. By the way, don't pat yourself on the back too hard. Almost everybody's moral. But now you're in the schoolyard. You see a relative value superseding a life value. You know it's wrong because you're moral, but you want to do something about it. So you think, I should tell a teacher. But you know what? It's kind of shocking what's going on. You're a little bit in shock. You're worried maybe that the bully is going to call you a snitch or come back after you. But you overcome the shock. You overcome the embarrassment. You go tell a teacher. Congratulations, you're ethical. An ethic is a moral value that's acted on. And it's hard. Okay, now you're in the schoolyard, you see a bully picking on a kid. You know that's wrong. You want to tell a teacher, but it's too late. The bully starts beating up that kid. Now you're scared, but you overcome your fear. You overcome the shock. And at risk to yourself, you protect that kid against that bully. Congratulations, you have the makings of an ethical protector. And that's really, after 20 years of doing this, everything I've ever learned about values, morals, and ethics right there. And by the way, it doesn't end in the schoolyard, does it? I would posit that every conflict in the world is a relative value being superseded, a relative value superseding the life value of somebody else. Whether it's a bully in work, right down to the Holocaust. And it takes great courage to speak up and do something when you see it. And that's why we need ethical warriors and ethical protectors, not only in the Marines, not only in law enforcement, but in the Golden Gate Breakfast Club. Why is this important? Well, getting back to policing, what we found is this thing of respecting people's lives, even when you don't respect their behaviors, is the key to de-escalating conflict. In other words, you can disrespect somebody's behavior, but if you disrespect them as a human being, they feel it and they will fight back. So this discipline of being able to separate in your mind the relative value of behavior from the absolute value of life is something that's very important and a key to community policing. And by the way, almost all of us can do this, and I'll prove it. How many of you have children, especially have gone through the teenage years with children? Okay? Did you always respect their behavior? Did you always respect what they said? Did you always respect their attitude? No, sometimes teenagers can be dirty, disgusting, do illegal things, disrespectful things, sloppy things, but you still love them. So you have this ability. You can love them and not like what they do. Now, for a professional protector, you have to be able to extend that ethic across everybody. In fact, why can't we all extend that ethic to everyone? Just saying. Anyway, you know, some people say to me, Jack, you're going soft here. You know, the ethical warrior, the ethical protector. You know, I talk to the police officers, they're worried that the next thing I'm going to do is teach them to be hugging a thug. And, you know, I worried about this, right? The last thing I wanted to do was take this concept of being ethical and cause Marines or police officers to become soft or become tactically slow or hesitant because they were afraid that they were going to do something, you know, that wasn't nice. And I worried about this. I agonized over it. You know, should I teach Marines to be killers or protectors? I mean, we're dealing with some pretty bad people in the terrorist world, and the same thing with police officers. Should we train officers to be enforcers or protectors? I mean, what's in the real world tactically the best way to go? And I thought about it and I thought about it and I thought about it. And then I got an idea, and I want to share that idea with you right now, okay? So this is the same slide I use with the Marines and with police officers. You're walking through a forest. You see this. Are you afraid? Predator, killer, grizzly. Most people would say, yes, they're afraid. Okay, fair enough. Now you're walking through the forest and you see this. Are you less afraid or more afraid? Craig, are you less afraid or more afraid? You're more afraid.
Definitely more afraid.
And why?
They're going to protect their baby.
They're going to protect the baby. Because even in nature, protectors are more dangerous than killers. And when I got the Marines to get over that hump and the police officers to get over that hump, they no longer were worried that being an ethical protector was going to make them tactically less effective. So here's the sequence. Teach everybody that they need to respect the life value of self and others, all others. Those tactical skills, we use VDI, as I said, and physical self-confidence. You know, we had to make them tactically, you know, if you're going to be ethical, you may put yourself at a little bit of a disadvantage to a really bad person. So we had to enhance their tactical skills, and we did it all together. Foundation, of course, being that ethic, that self-concept of being a protector. Here's how we did it in Camden. We had to get top-down support and buy-in at all levels. We trained every single person, starting with the leadership. And then we created a mentor group of the 20 most respected officers, and they weren't necessarily the most highly ranked. Some of them were men, some of them were women, all races. Some of them were dog handlers, some were detectives, some were just patrolmen. And we trained those mentors, and they helped us train, but most importantly, set the example, create the culture that the rest of the officers could buy into. And then we had to come up with ideas of how to sustain the momentum, because, you know, when you make a culture change, you can't just do it with a PowerPoint or 1 or 2 or 3 day training. You have to sustain the momentum so the culture feeds on itself and becomes self-perpetuating. So some things that we did was, we came up, we constantly reaffirmed the self-concept of a protector. You know, a lot of officers say, stay safe. We would say, hey, everyone is safer in your presence. Just a little thing that we would say. Then we would activate the emotions, because as we know from the stories, that moral behavior is activated not by bullet points like this, but by stories. And we talked about the officers who had performed as ethical protectors and done selfless things. And And that helped to build the legend around the ethical protector in that department. And then we put everything together with quick reviews of the tactical and verbal skills. You know, officers don't have a lot of time to train. Marines do, but officers don't. So we just took 5 minutes during roll call, and we would just go through the de-escalation scripts, or we would do some tactical movements, or we would just tell a story. And that built the culture also, and it was a sustainment methodology. Here's a picture of a department we trained in Toms River, New Jersey. Actually, Toms River was a little more impressive than Camden in some ways, because Camden, we kind of started from scratch. But Toms River, we had to change the tires where the car was moving. I mean, it was an established police department. A lot of cross-cultural issues, a lot of drugs. It's near the Jersey Shore, so coming and going from Philadelphia and Atlantic City. And what they did, they would train together, and then they would talk about the culture. And they put together these training sessions for their sustainment. And I'll put Toms River up there as any department when it comes to community policing and having community support. So I want to tell one last story here, because one of the things that we're most worried about, and this applies to Marines, police officers, but I think it applies to all of us here at the breakfast meeting. It's a story that happened to me. I'm not a professional trainer, by the way. I have a healthcare company. That's my real job. I just do this training on the side. For the Marines, I do it for $1 a year. And so I'm working at a healthcare company up in North Jersey. I live at the Jersey Shore. And my company moved, and now the office was 63 miles away. And I was commuting every day to this job. And it was a Friday. I'll never forget this. And I was really excited because my mentor, who I told you about, Robert Humphrey, was at my house. And he was visiting, and I couldn't wait to get home to talk to him and hang out with him. We were going to do some training the next day. But I had to work. It was Friday. And I look out the window at about 3 o'clock, and it was sleeting. And I said, wow, this is going to be a horrible commute home. I better slide out early, right? And I get a buzzer. The president says, Jack, can you come in? We need to go over the sales figures. I'm the sales vice president, so I guess I have to go to the meeting. Of course, the boss lived a mile from the office. But I go to the meeting and blah, 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 blah. We're going through the numbers and all this. And finally, the boss looks out the window and says, Jack, it's sleeting. You better get out of here. And I said, anyway. I go back to my office, and I had this office in kind of a corner office, and over to my left, it was toward the Lincoln Tunnel. I could see, as far as I could see, coming out of the Lincoln Tunnel, headlights. And I look to my right on the New Jersey Turnpike, as far as I can see, stoplights, taillights. And now I wasn't pissed yet, but now I'm really pissed. But I get in my car and I'm driving for my life, sliding down in the sleet, and people smacking into the guardrail. And I mean, I'm like this, right? It took me like 3 hours to get home. By the time I pull into the driveway, I was just frazzled. And I'm sure that you've all had a day like that, right? And I pull into the driveway and I get out of my car and I'm shaking. And I walk into the house and I walk through the door. And this is what I see. Over to the left, on the couch, is Dr. Humphrey with my kids crawling over him, laughing and screaming. To the right, in the kitchen, is my wife cooking and singing. And I got to tell you, folks, it pissed me off. You know, I'm glad everybody's having such a nice life, laughing and singing while I'm driving home, bringing home the bacon through the sleet. I'm glad everybody's having such a nice life on my dime. Well, I must have had that look on my face again, because Dr. Humphrey looks up from the couch and he looks at me and he goes, get out. Get out. What are you talking about, get out? This is my house. Get out. So I got out. I'm standing outside in the sleet. And my mind was just, you know, I didn't know what I was thinking. And the door opened, and he came out, and he looked at me sternly for a second, and then he softened a little bit, and he said, you know, Jack, you know what we were doing in here before you came home, right? We were waiting in joyous anticipation of us all being together, having a wonderful meal, and enjoying ourselves all night. And you walked through that door, and in 1 second, you broke every heart in this house. Is that what you were trying to do there, Mr. Ethical Protector? Yeah, I felt about that big, right? He said, don't you understand, Jack, you know, wherever you go, people should feel safer because you're there. And I'm not talking about your fancy martial arts. I'm talking about they should just feel in their hearts happy to see you because their protector has returned. So I tell you that story for obvious reasons. I mean, we all have stresses. Police officers have stresses. Marines have stresses. Businessmen, business people, we all have stresses. But if we can be ethical protectors, even in our regular lives, all I can say is, based on my experience, and I fail all the time at this, but when I can do it, it's a better life. So thank you very much for your time. I just want to introduce you to a couple of folks. This is Lance Corporal Tyler Troyer. He's in Iraq. In this picture, I had a kind of emotional discussion with his father when I asked if I could use this picture. He was the Washington State pitcher, high school lefty. And there he is in a war zone, protecting a little kid. He has his helmet on. And Tyler Troyer died protecting that kid. Because everywhere he went, everybody was a little safer except him. This is Gunnery Sergeant Raymond Plower. In this picture, he's a staff sergeant, and he had his 15 minutes of fame. He was in a movie called Fahrenheit 9/11. You may have seen it. It was about the Iraq War. And he's in that movie. And if you see him in that movie, you may come away thinking that Raymond Plower did not know what he was doing in Iraq. So I thought I'd show you a picture of what he was doing in Iraq before he was killed protecting those children. And this is us. We get to go home after this meeting, after work today. And I ask you just to take a moment before you get out of your car and walk into your house to remember my story and don't do what I did. I can't say that you'll get a promotion or you'll make more money or any of that, but based upon my experience, the life of an ethical protector, whether you're a Marine, whether you're a police officer, or whether you're just one of us, it's a better life. And I want to thank you very, very much again, Craig and Tony, for your time and your kind attention to everybody else. If you have any questions or want to contact me, please, my information is right here. Again, thanks so much.
Jack, that was fantastic. Your story at the end was just amazing. Patricia, I mean, we have with us one of the greatest speakers, experts in America. And Patricia, what was your take on that? That was amazing, in my opinion.
Well, it was wonderful content. It was a great end. I admit I was tearing up. It was amazing. And my question to you is, have they made an action hero of you yet, Jack? Because I'll buy it. And I know Janice Litvin will as well. Fabulous presentation, and thank you for not only your contribution to our country and the world, but a very great message. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, I appreciate that so much, really. Thank you.
Well, let's, Jack, if you can stick around for a little bit, can we open it up for some questions?
I've been home alone here for 7 months. My kids are in LA. My wife is sequestered in Japan with her ailing, failing mother. So I really don't have that much to do. So I'd be happy to stick around.
Well, I appreciate it. You know, you mentioned the relative value versus life value. I thought that was your way of explaining that was really great. And I like the foundational aspect that you put on it, because it's stuff that we can all apply. I mean, we don't have to be a martial arts expert to adopt that thinking. And I really appreciated you talking about that. And what other questions do we have here? Janice, would you like to say something?
How could I come to a breakfast club without saying something? So, Jack, I loved your talk. I was just spellbound. My husband was even in here for a few minutes. My question to you is this: what are you doing to help policemen who are not valuing the lives of people from other cultures? Obviously, I'm referring to the Black Lives Matter issue. It's my contention that if someone is a racist, they shouldn't be a policeman. But how do you ferret that out in the interview process? How do you train the police interviewers to better train their policemen?
Well, that's a very complicated answer. But let me just give you a couple of points that may be easy just to absorb. One of the things is, this presentation I just did was 20 minutes. If you give me 3 days with them, I can turn some hearts and minds around. It's a very complicated process, because you have to take a bunch of things: the physical, the moral, the character, cross-cultural, and put them all together, kind of brewing it like a beer, you know? Because you can have all these ingredients, but if they don't come together, and probably the most overlooked part is the shared adversity leadership from the front. Because if they feel that you're sincere and that you're going to do it with them, they may come around. Now, there's a couple of percentage of people that shouldn't be police officers, let's face it. And you know, that's not up to me. I mean, that's up to the unions, and there's a lot of complications to that. But let me tell you what I have found. I have found that people have strong relative values. And one of the relative values is that if you're not of my race, or if you're not of my team, or if you're not of my political party, then I don't have to treat you with respect. And I've had some really hardcore, sorry to sound like I'm stereotyping, but you know, Southern boys that grew up with, you know, if you ain't like me, I don't have to respect your life. And they were hardcore, hardcore. But once we turned them around, they were hardcore the other way, because they were just hardcore guys. So if you could make them respect people of different cultures or different colors, and they brought them into their team, they would be the biggest proponents. They would be the biggest protectors of them. You couldn't say a bad word about a black guy to one of these guys once we got him. Because they had just brought them in, they had just finally seen that they were part of their team. And we did it by breaking them down through shared adversity. You know, they'd have to help each other. You know, they'd have to carry each other through the sand or through the mud. They'd have to, and then they realized that these people they're just like us. You know, they're relatively different, but intrinsically, in the absolute value of their life, they're exactly the same. And then they became the biggest proponents of them. And that's just my experience. It's not scientific. But.
Marty Majulski, you have a question? Oh, Marty, your microphone's off. You guys have to unmute yourself when you go on.
And Mr. President, Bill Buchanan has been putting his hand up since the very opening of questions.
All right, Bill, you're after Marty.
Anyway, Bill Buchanan and I, and certainly you all swore to protect the Constitution, and we're 100% behind this. But the real question is in terms of implementation. Isn't it really difficult to judge an officer by the amount of trouble he doesn't get in? By the amount of things he de-escalates. Do you see my question?
Absolutely. Right now, we have people that are standing back because they're afraid that they're going to be unfairly judged and things like that. So, and this is the most important part. I'm not going to try to say that this is easy. You have to create a culture within the department that supports active community policing, and you have to have good relationships with the community so that if something does go wrong, the community will back you. And the only way that I've been able to do it, and again, I'm not the expert here. I'm not even a cop. I mean, I just got kind of just a weird situation that all of a sudden I'm training cops now, but I've been successful in, let me tell you how we're successful. When it's top down and everybody trains and goes through the program, and you start to create a culture within the department where they view themselves, their self-concept is as protectors first, enforcers second, and then they have reach out to the community like Camden did, like Toms River did. When something goes wrong, when somebody gets shot, or when, or an officer goes off the rails or off the reservation, the community will support them, and then the officers feel more comfortable being proactive. And that's not easy. Camden did it because they threw money at him and we had a blank slate. Chief Mitch Little in Toms River did it because he was just a great leader and he was able to change the tires with the car moving, I always say. Now, here's the flip side. I have other departments who find out we have an open course, an ethical protector open course. And they have 3 guys who are always getting in trouble or have demeanor complaints or whatever, use of force complaints. And they send their quote unquote broken toys to us. And in 3 days, most of the time, we get them back on track. We can reboot them through this kind of synergistic process that we have. But if I put them right back into the same culture that they came from, how long is that going to last? Answer, it doesn't last. So, that's the good news and the bad news, Marty. Thank you for the question.
All right, Bill Buchanan.
Good morning, Jack. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I just want to welcome you back to the Golden Breakfast Club.
I remember you.
I mean, it was a while back, right?
13 or 14 years ago, I think.
At least, yes.
Yeah.
And I can see you've refined your presentation. This is, I can't imagine anything more timely than your approach to policing and that sort of thing. So I congratulate you on that, and thanks very much for your service as a Marine, as a Marine officer. I served in the Corps as an officer during the Spanish-American War, and so that was a while back. But 26 years as an FBI agent, and let me tell you this, Jack.
I remember you very well, Bill. I remember you very well.
Yeah, we had a nice conversation after your presentation.
I was telling Tony that you and I had talked, and I couldn't quite remember, but now I do very well.
I think I may have made the comment that I was actually born in Quantico. Nobody believes that, especially those who are in the Corps. There's a bronze plaque on Barnett Avenue that says Bill Buchanan born here in 1942. Now, anyway, this is so timely. I can't believe it. At 10:30 today in Mill Valley, I'm going to buy coffee for a former San Rafael police officer who's a lieutenant and is now the city manager for Mill Valley. But what I wanted to tell you is that as a young special agent of the FBI, we went about our work, and I always had the feeling in the back of my mind that there was a big gap between talking to somebody and actually applying deadly force. because we had minimal what we call defensive tactics back in those days. You know, we're talking about, I joined the FBI in 1969. And so the state of defensive tactics was pretty rudimentary, at least I thought so. But we had to deal with what we had. So we went on out about into our careers and so on. But all through my career, I had the feeling that I was deficient in taking measures, physical measures, short of pulling that trigger that would have been effective in the situation. My question for you today, Jack, is what is the state of proficiency among special agents of the FBI in martial arts?
I don't know the answer to that because I don't work with the FBI that much, but I'll tell you about police officers that I deal with. What I have found is you have a couple of guys that like to fight. Maybe they did MMA or something like that, and they can fight. And they also end up becoming defensive tactics instructors to train everybody else. The problem with that is everybody else, including, you know, smaller guys or women, don't have the strength or the muscle or the youth of these guys. So they don't learn anything from them. In fact, they don't like to train it because they feel that they're going to be bullied or they're going to get hurt. So we have to be very, very careful with our training to make it tactical for us, you know, how to make yourself less of a target, less easy to hit, less easy to take down and, you know, relieve you of your weapon and those things first. And once people got confident in the tactical piece, the movement piece, we call it tactical maneuver, then we could start teaching some of the takedowns and escapes and things like that. But you have to be very careful because if you get, you know, one of these macho / bullies out there as the defensive tactics instructor, this not only doesn't help anybody, it's self-defeating. And then you have somebody that has no skills because they've avoided it or they're afraid of it. And then they get themselves in tactical trouble. And I've watched video after video, I'm sure you have too, Bill. How did you get yourself in that position that you would need to shoot the guy? Well, what's the rush? What are you doing so close? Why didn't you call backup? Why don't you just move away from him and wait? What's the rush? I mean, you get overtime. I mean, so I think there is a problem that we have. The instructors are dealing with people at their own level, and they're not dealing with people who don't have physical skills but need them, and tactical skills but need them.
Thanks for your answer, Jack, and thanks for a great presentation, man.
Thanks, sir. Good to see you again.
Yeah, likewise.
Well, everybody, it's 9:02, just turned 9:02, and I know some people need to get off to other things. Jack, I just wanted to take a moment to thank you again for joining us and sharing with us today.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony. Yeah.
Thank you. Glad to have you.
It was a fantastic presentation. If anyone has any further questions, I'd like to ask you to follow up with Jack separately, and we will have a recording of this available in a day or two. So we'd like to say thank you for joining us. Tony, do you have anything else you'd like to say at this point?
I do not, other than thank you, Jack, for being here and coming on the club meeting. Again, I thought it was very topical and timely to have Jack here in light of this current situations in the world. So thank you very much, Jack.
My pleasure.
He hasn't hit me in a long time, thank goodness, because he usually hurt.
I'm on your side.
I know he's on my side.
Wow. Well, fantastic presentation. This is the end of the Golden Gate Breakfast Club for this week, and everybody have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you guys.